Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Othello, and today we get to hear from Aemilia in Act 4, Scene 3, which is the end of Act 4. And things are not looking good for Desdemona at this point. Iago has convinced Othello that Cassio and Desdemona have been sleeping together, so Othello wants both of them dead. Iago has said that he will take care of Cassio by way of Roderigo. Cassio is having dinner with Bianca. Iago is going to make sure that he leaves by like midnight, and then Roderigo can jump him, and Iago is going to be there as a backup. So between the two of them, they'll make sure that Cassio dies. Iago also suggested to Othello that he kill Desdemona by smothering her in their bed, which Othello thinks is a good idea. So now at the top of Act 4, Scene 3, where it's after dinner, people are leaving to go back to their separate quarters, that sort of a thing, and Othello asks Lodovigo to have a little bit of a walk and a chat. So the two of them start to go off, and then he tells Desdemona that she should just go straight to bed. He'll be there in a little bit, and he should dismiss Aemilia once they get there, because Aemilia, while she is also Iago's wife, she is Desdemona's sort of like handmaiden or lady in waiting, whatever, takes care of her, does the things. So the majority of this scene is a lovely scene between Aemilia and Desdemona, just two women talking about stuff, and Desdemona is very sad. She feels like she's been disowned by Othello, which she basically has been, and she doesn't know why, because she hasn't been doing anything wrong. So she's talking to Aemilia about these things, and she recalls a maid that either she had or her mother had, who died because she was lovesick, that sort of thing. And then she sings this lovely song about a willow tree, while Aemilia is helping her undress and get ready for bed and all that sort of thing. And then after the song, Desdemona is like, are there really women in the world who would do this sort of thing to their husbands, who would cheat on their husbands like this? And Amelia's like, oh yeah, absolutely. There's women out there that would do that. And Desdemona's like, no, I wouldn't do that for all the world. And Amelia's like, well, the world is a pretty big place, and if you were to own the world, if you did something bad, you could make it good because the world is yours. So is that really, think about it when you say you wouldn't do anything bad for all the world. That's a pretty big trade to make. And Desdemona's like, I don't think that there's anybody. Really? You think that there's women that would do that? And Aemilia says, yes, a dozen. And as many to the vantage as would store the world they played for. But I do think it is their husbands' faults if wives do fall. Say they slack their duties and pour our treasures into foreign laps, or else break out in peevish jealousies, throwing restraint upon us. Or say they strike us, or scant our former having in despite. Why, we have galls, and though we have some grace, yet we have some revenge. Let husbands know their wives have sense like them. They see and smell, and have their palates both for sweet and sour, as husbands have. What is it that they do when they change us for others? Is it sport? I think it is. And doth affection breed it? I think it doth. Is frailty that thus errs? It is so too. And have not we affections? Desires for sport and frailty as men have? Then let them use us well, else let them know the ills we do, their ills instruct us so. So, it's monologues like this that make people think that Shakespeare was a feminist, because what Aemilia is saying here is that there's plenty of women who would cheat on their husbands, but really it's the husband's fault that the women's cheat, because the husbands mistreat them. They hit them, or the husbands cheat first, or the husbands get really jealous and don't let the wives have things and stuff like that. And then she goes on to say it's akin to the very famous speech in Merchant of Venice, if you prick us, do we not bleed, sort of a thing. She's like, women feel stuff the same way that men feel stuff. Women like good things and bad things. We get angry. Yes, we're graceful, but we also want revenge when we've been wronged. And yes, our eye may wander to another pretty man, or we might just want to have fun, or all these other things, like we feel the same things that men do. So if men want to run around and cheat on their wives and treat their wives terribly, they should know that their wives in turn will also treat them terribly. That's just the way that the world goes. I sort of love this speech for that reason. It's standing up for women, and it's pointing out things that were not necessarily prevalent themes in society or in literature at the time, but just sort of talking about the equality of men and women. And Desdemona is still a little bit doubtful about this, and wary of things to come. But that's essentially the end of Act 4, Scene 3, as Aemilia saying, yeah, stuff like this can happen, and Desdemona going, I don't really like it anyway. And then the scene ends, and the act ends, so we will get into Act 5 tomorrow, and I think we really only have about a week of Othello left before we wrap it all up. So there's plenty of things that need to be tied up here, and they will all get tied up within the next week. And if you have thoughts or curiosities on where they might go, please leave a comment. I'd love to have a chat. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow for more. Mwah.